Hi. Hi, I'm Doris. I'm very happy to be here to be the last one because I can end whenever I want. And I'm not going to talk for that long because it's the last session, and then I just want to leave more time for discussion because I think it's still quite a lot of room to discuss on the content I'm going to present today. And probably you might have a lot of questions. I'm really happy to answer. So I'm here on behalf of ProVeg International, the organization I'm working for right now. And I want to actually talk a little bit about the background, why I'm here. Because I'm working in for this like China program at the ProVeg International right now. But and my team members are here. Can you say hi, team members? Hi. Yeah. So the topic today is Veg Advocacy in China, and yeah, I should use this one. And I want to say something about this background because Kiki is our communication officer, and I was asking her, can you please pick a picture? And she picked this picture, which is there's no greens inside. Because usually when you have like vegan slides, you have a lot of greens. And she was like, but this is typical Chinese. Because we are the land of tofu, right? And so this is like a really nice tofu slide. And there will be like hundreds of tofu in my slide like later. And then the content today, I'm going to give a very brief introduction and on the background of this talk, and then we'll go straight into the problem. Like, what problem are we addressing in China right now, and how serious is the problem? And then we'll look at the veg trend. Like, is it trending? And if it is, like, how is it trending? And then we'll look at the veg scene. It means like we're going to look at what people are doing in China already and outside of China to help to solve the issue. And then we'll look at the opportunities and challenges for their work as well as our work at the end, like conclusion. And this is another really funny picture because I don't know why Kiki picked it because we like to have soups, and then this is like all the ingredients of the soup. Probably she picked it because of the content side. So I actually first started in the movement in Hong Kong when I was working for the Hong Kong Vegetarian Society. I was volunteering there, and then I get to know about Berlin as a vegan capital. And because I studied German before, and I really want to find an excuse to just go back to Berlin. So I get to know about the work of the Arbeitsweise Stiftung. So I emailed them, and then Doris was super nice to take me in the departments. I did an internship there, and at that time I get to know about ProVeg. And they were at the fringe of getting internationalized. So I thought maybe I can contribute to that. Maybe if they go internationalized, maybe they can also do something in China and in the region. So I started there 1 year ago. So last year I gave a talk as well, but I'm sure this talk will be more fun because last year I was so nervous. I was like, I don't know what I'm talking, but this year I'm just chill. Yeah. And so ProVeg International is an NGO is focused on like food awareness and like promoting plant-based food. And we are now mostly in Europe, and also we started also in South Africa, but we will soon be in like in East Asia, and we want to get more active in China. And then I think, yeah. So just want to show you the faces behind the organization. There's like a lot of amazing people, but none of our team members are in this picture because we missed the chance to take this picture. So hopefully next picture, there'll be a lot of different faces. And this is our team picture. So right now we are, I mean, it's hard to define a team. This is our team, but we have like a lot of support from also our other colleagues. And yeah, I'm really happy that they are here, all in Berlin, to make this happen. So why are we talking about China? So there will be a lot of graphs. I'm just going to screen for it. I'm not going to talk about the graphs because I'm very bad at like graphs and stats. So first of all, like ProVeg mission is to reduce animal consumption by 50% by the year of 2040. It's really ambitious, but if we have to achieve this goal, we definitely have to look at China. Why? Because, not this graph. I want to show this graph. A quarter of the animals are being consumed in China. And then it has been, sorry, it's the sequence. It has been increasing like crazy in the past years. And Yeah, it shows the change in meat consumption from like 1960 to 2000. Yeah, like China is really like red, and then yeah, all these graphs just shows you one fact is that per capita meat consumption is rising, as well as like total meat consumption as well. This shows like different kind of animals, like consumption of different kind of animals, like the trend, increasing trend from last year's. Again, China is raising. So I think before you came here, you probably know about this already. So why is it like that? Like, how come? Like, why are people in China consuming much more meat than in the past? This is an interesting picture. This is a picture of dinner table in Qing Dynasty, but I actually can't see what they're eating inside. But I think the two pictures here want to show a comparison of how usually people eat in the past, like traditionally, and how people usually eat nowadays. And if you are familiar with this, with the social development in China, you know that economic growth take off quite late, compared to Western countries. So when the meat consumption in Western country already peak, maybe not in every country, but China is only just begun. So like this way. Oh, it's not working. Yeah, I think it's my computer. Okay. Yeah. I will just keep on talking. So I think my computer stopped. It doesn't. Oh yeah, yeah. And then why does economic growth contribute to meat eating? Is because in the past people can't really afford meat, but I'm saying actually nowadays not everyone can afford meat in China, because the income gap and the development gap between rural areas and urban areas still differs a lot. So when we talk about rising meat consumption, we're actually focusing on the major cities, first tier, second tiers, but actually not in all of China. Everyone is eating a lot of meat. So if we say that there's a increasing per capita meat consumption, and how much meat it would take for those people couldn't afford meat to compensate for the not increasing meat consumption of people who cannot afford meat. If you get what I mean. So it's really increasing rocket high, and then so why we know that the meat consumption is rising in China because people now can afford meat, and then but why is it that if they know that meat is eating meat is bad for the environment and bad for the world, why are they still eating it? Because as Doris just said, maybe they are gonna repeat the mistake the Western society is making. But if they see that is a big problem in the Western countries, why are they still doing it? It's because the awareness is actually quite low if you compare to Germany. And I think if you have to compare to Germany, where environmentalism is a norm, then it's not the case in China. I'm not blaming everyone, but this is just the fact that it's just not as common as an issue that people would talk about in everyday life in China. And of course, they have a lot of other issues to deal with. And for environmental impact, like pollution and climate change, actually, in recent years, people start to get more aware of the issue, and more NGOs are working in this field. We are going to look at what the NGOs are talking, but it's not as strong as in the Western society, but it's increasing. But still, the awareness is low. And health impact of meat eating, I think I started maybe in the past decade. The people, for example, my father's generation, they start to when they are smaller, when they are like until like 20 something, they don't really have a lot of meat on the table. But when the family get richer and then they can get meat everywhere, they start eating it like every day, like in every meal. It's true. Like just they think it's a norm to eat a lot of meat. And then I think the negative impact is just started to show in the recent years, and people think that, okay, I'm having this like diet-related disease, and so I think the awareness is increasing. And then for animal welfare, there is a study asking like for young people in Shanghai, maybe I mixed up with the other study, that what do they think about animal welfare, or have you ever heard of it? And sadly, the awareness of animal welfare is also quite low, and a lot of people didn't even heard about the word animal welfare. So if you have to tell people, you go like just don't eat meat because this is bad for animals, and then they might be really confused. They think, okay, but animals are here for us to eat, you know, as well as, okay, there are a lot of companion animals is more like a common thing right now in China. When I visit like different cities, I see a lot of people having dogs. And I think, of course, if you ignore the dog trade part, I think it's a good thing. Because they kind of have the linkage back to the animals, and it get them to also think more about like the linkage of like eating animals and like the animals itself. And then, so we know about how the awareness is like in China, and so there are actually people who are aware of the issues, right? But why are they reluctant to become vegan or like eat a plant-based diet? Because there are quite a lot of obstacles here. The first thing is what differs in the most about the perception of plant-based diet is that it exists already in China for a long time, because Buddhism, if you know about like Buddhism in East Asia, a lot of like veg population, they're actually Buddhists, and they are not. It's not an alien concept to them, like eating vegan or vegetarian, because they are people having this eating habit among them, and then so it's not like in the Western society that the meat like diet used to be meat heavy. It's not the case, but it's actually quite hard to tackle, because they think it's common among like for example, my mother's or like my grandmother's generation. They think, oh, I know like eating meat is not healthy. I know like we should have more. They always say more veg, less meat, and they agree with it. But but in fact, for them to go completely plant-based, they don't think it's necessary. They don't understand why you have to take the last bit of meat away, because they think just eat less, it's fine, just eat more veg, just eat more. And then they have doubt as well on a completely plant-based diet. Eating habit, because in bigger cities like Shanghai, Beijing, a lot of people eat out because they work like long hours every day, and then it's more common for them to not like go home and cook, but then to eat out. I think it's more I'm more familiar with the sex in Hong Kong, but the sex in Hong Kong is like average person have dinner outside like 4 days a week. So what they eat actually is dictated by what is available in the restaurant around them. I think this is also similar cases in Shanghai and Beijing, big cities like this. So if it's hard to find alternatives outside, it's hard for them to, to go through the barrier and talk to every waiter or waitress in the restaurant. And can you please make a veg diet, and they have to explain what it is, because explaining is also a very hard part. Because here I have some like Chinese words here. This is Cantonese 食斋, and this is Mandarin 吃素. It both means eating veg, and sadly the two words is equivalent to plain. It means plain, pure. I would use this word, for example, to explain to describe a color or like a pattern that is maybe just plain color. I would just say this is plain. I will use this word. So when you explain to people that you are eating veg, and people already like kind of associate this with an image of very not colorful, just not how do I say it? Not delicious, not appealing meal. And this is the perception that is quite hard to, I think it's quite hard to break, but because of a lot of groups' effort is changing right now. And social norm, because I think Asian culture is more a collective culture than Western. So if you have to go vegan or vegetarian, it means that you have a lot of social norms to break. You have to explain to people around you why you're doing this, especially in family dinner. I don't think this is just the case in China. I think it's also the case for every vegan in the world that you experience it. It's really hard, but especially in China, I think it's just very, very difficult, I guess. But I just want to break the stereotype that eating veg is plain, because I actually only take this picture during my recent trip to China, just to one small city. And all the veg food that I can have in vegetarian restaurant or normal restaurant, they're actually really colorful. You see, like, they're just amazing. And I actually want to show this. Is it a pointer? Yeah, I want to show you this picture. This is I mean, all the others are vegan, and this is meat here. This is a meal that is prepared by my grandmother's, my boyfriend's grandmother, and they don't eat that much meat. They just have a little plate of meat, and all the others are veggies. And it's actually not that hard to go vegan. It's not that we lack the fresh veggies or we lack the alternative. I don't think this is the core issue of eating vegetarian in China. And of course, a lot of tofu. This is like the best tofu I've ever had in China. Like, I mean, this one is crispy on the outside, and there's like liquid like soya milk on the inside. I mean, because I was talking to Doris, and she was asking me, can you please send me your teaser? And I was like, oh, sorry, I'm traveling in the land of tofu. And she was like, you're talking about Germany? I was like, no way. I mean, you have a lot of like good tofu brands here, and I really like especially like the roasted tofu, smoked tofu. But I think like this not comparable to China. Yeah. And here I want to give you an overview of how we think, and according to what we have heard from fellow advocates, the motivation to go veg, like how strong is each of them. And I think health is still a big part of motivation for people to go vegetarian, because they will try one meal or two meals just because of health reasons, because they think they need to, you know, like cleanse their body or lose some weight, and also because of like various like heart disease and other diseases. And I think it will continue to grow. And for the smallest is the justice reason. The justice reason means like people aware of how inefficient growing meat is than growing crop for human being. And I don't think this issue is really being well discussed in China. And so it's small. And then animal is smaller than environmental. And I think environmental is like growing much stronger than past years. But the good thing is they're all increasing. So it means like it's a really positive thing to see. And so I'm going to talk about the Veg Trend. So when you look at the place and see, oh, is the Veg Trend growing, and you look at the vegan population, but it's really hard to calculate in China, because there has been some survey in China to ask people, oh, do you regard yourself as a vegetarian? Or some survey just ask, how do you eat meat? Like, if yes, and how much meat do you eat? But then, first of all, I think the definition is already quite complicated in China. Like, if people consider themselves to be like vegan or vegetarian, or maybe they just don't eat meat because they can't afford it. You can't say a person that can't afford meat, and you can't say then they are vegan just because they have a plant-based diet, because they are not deliberately doing it. And there are potential for these people to go to eat meat, right? And some surveys show that it's like 1%, 3%, 5%. And like, unfortunately, I think this figure is perhaps like between like 1% to 3%. And if you compare it to Germany, it's really not that high. And And then we also heard another news. That's quite well known in the Western vegan society. When I was here doing internship 2 years ago, one day my colleague at the Albert Schweitzer Stiftung asked me, "Hey Doris, you know, like the Chinese government is going to cut down meat consumption by 50%." I was like, "You sure?" And I was I was just Googling it, and I saw these articles. I first saw the article by The Guardian, and I was like, "It's The Guardian, it must be true, right?" And then I read over it. I was like, okay, there's some new policy, like dietary. So the fact is they have a dietary guideline issued by society called the Chinese Nutrition Society. And they issue this guideline like every few years to for the citizens and to tell them how much like veggies or different categories of food should they have, and then the media compare this amount, like the recommended amount of meat intake, to the actual intake of that year, like. So it shows it as like a 50% decrease, but actually when you look at the policy, if you look at the guideline, you realize it's just a guideline. It's not yet being translated into real policy, and it hasn't been enforced. So I think it's too over optimistic that if we are just overjoyed by this news and say, hey, they're really cutting down 50% meat consumption, because I think we still have some time to expect until this day will come, and a lot of work to be done. But of course, it's a good thing that they have it in a guideline. At least it's not more. At least it's like 50% less. And then when we talk to people that associated with the drafting this report, they also actually agree that more effort should be made on education and to make people understand the need to cut down meat consumption. So the third reference that we can look at is the number of veg restaurants, and this is like purely positive news, because like in Shanghai alone, the number of vegan restaurants, like vegetarian restaurants, has increased for like how many percent? Like double in 5 years. Yeah, and this is a map showing all the like vegetarian restaurants. Like it's illustrated by a very great artist. And then when I was in Shanghai, I'm just like using this map and just go around, eat everything. And the restaurants are like really, really good. Although I love the vegan restaurant in Berlin, sorry, it's not comparable. It's like, maybe because I'm Asian, I don't know, but it's really great. So I think if you look at this number, you know that they appear maybe because people are aware and they want to open like a vegan restaurant, but actually demand, right? And so it is a really good sign. But of course, Shanghai cannot represent the rest of China, because Shanghai is like this really special like metropolis. So, but still, it happens already in China, and it's very hopeful that other bigger cities will follow it. And I don't have the figures for vegan restaurants in Beijing and Guangzhou, but I think it's also increasing. And the last one is a market research being done by Mintel. And they expect the opportunities for plant-based food to grow. Like China is like actually the top market until year 2020. So if the experts say it, then it should be true, right? So so we're really hopeful that more people will choose like a vegan option and vegan products if they have the choice to. And so how many time do I have left? Yeah, I want to go faster because the fun part is in the behind. So who's doing what in a scene? I'm really happy to share with you, because this is actually what I have learned during the past year. I have had numerous conversations with all different groups, like doing directly on this issue or maybe like indirectly. And this is a map, maybe a bit abstract. And so on this side is, so it's all activities and interventions that have been done in China. So on this side is individual, and this side is institutional. And you can see like this, for example, individual is, what I mean individual is like activity that is target and changing individual behavior. For example, are there enough vegetarian resources and info on the internet for people who want to change? There's quite a lot. And media campaign, like vegan challenge for people to try vegan meals, maybe like diet for maybe 1 week, and vegan festival, public outreach. And of course, you can't it's not in proportional. I mean, it's not that scientific. If our head of research, Daniel, is here, he will hate me because he actually gave me a software to use to map this, but I don't have time to use this yet. But I hope this is at least like kind of shows the proportion. And in the middle, there is like for example, reach out to medical community to influence like doctors and medical experts' opinion on vegan diet or scientific research on negative impact of like meat consumption, or NGO outreach, like meaning that talking to other NGOs, maybe working in the environmental field, and get them interested also working like on reducing meat consumption. And then on this part is institutional, for example, chef training and like influencing catering groups. Or like media outreach, meaning it's different from media campaign. Like media outreach is reaching out to media and ask them to actually report about plant-based meals more positively and talk more about the issues of meat consumption. And food education in schools and uni, which is like my amazing colleague Christine has been doing in schools. And food policy in schools and unis, for example, convincing the school that you have to, because of the health of your students, you have to have certain amount of vegan diet in like you offer in the school canteens, restaurant outreach, food companies, food innovation. And the smaller dot here is L, is lobbying. And if you know about like Chinese politics, you might understand why lobbying is so small in China. And so this is roughly the map. So I'm gonna talk about a few like really amazing work that has been done by Chinese advocates and groups already. The first is media campaign and veg resources. They are called Veg Planet. They are really big. I think their fan base is, how much is their fan base? I think it's 600,000 fans or something, I think. Yeah. And it's really a lot of people. And then they do all kind of, they're more like a lifestyle. They kind of frame vegan veg eating as a lifestyle. So it's really lighthearted. They have a lot of fans that's like younger, and then they want to go veg for various reasons, but it doesn't matter because they portray veg eating as a very really fun thing to do, and also a very healthy thing. And they organize also different workshops, cooking classes, and everything to help you to become a vegan. And the second one I want to talk about is media campaign. I think maybe this is just like one of a kind, because is there anywhere else in the world where like the most famous celebrity is featured in TV commercials in all the major cities to talk about eating less meat? It happened in China. So it's the organization Wild 8. They have a campaign called Veg Eating, and then these celebrities they are talking about use direct translation, use every bite to change the world, and eating veg is my new way of eating, something like that. So it appeared in very like busy areas, CBDs in the major cities. So it doesn't only appear to people that are already convinced, but like also like general public, in a very lighthearted way as well. And then so the third part is campus outreach and food policy. And I have to talk about these two amazing groups. The first one is the Tsinghua University Veg Association. Like, this is actually quite a funny phenomena in China. There are a lot of veg associations in the universities. Like, it's kind of like a tradition because, I mean, the tradition of veg can come from different angles, right? And can come from religion or just purely like a celebration of the like Chinese culture. So a lot of them is actually like they are founded in the beginning like decades ago as like a cultural association, you know, to spread this like Chinese veg eating culture. And then the recent years, these like veg associations and the founders, which are all like university students, they have the idea to make it more like progressive and to have more influence. For example, they want to convince their own universities to have at least a vegan window I don't know how to explain. Like, the canteens in China they have like a window. It's different from the canteens, the mess that you have here. So they want to have. They call it a window, like a restaurant. So they want to open up more like veg windows. I kind of like the name. It's called Veg Windows because you see something more like out of a window, right? So they have been working really hard. Like Tsinghua, they actually really work from scratch to convince the school council the reasons why they need to have a vegan so they don't just go and say, hey, it's because of environment or animals, but they're very smart and they know that the university is really, because Tsinghua is the top university in China, and then they convince the management that it's actually more international to do it, because there are a lot of international guests they have to receive in the university, and a lot of them is actually vegetarian and they don't have much food to eat in a campus. So if you have if you have a veg window, it's actually like win-win. Like students can have it, and also international guests can have it. Good image for university. So they actually did it. So it happened. It's amazing. It's funny. It's kind of not. It's not like. Down to top, but also like top down. Like it's a really good case study. And also this one here is called the University and Colleges Vegan Association. Is a network of all the most of the veg association in the universities. They form like an alliances and to share the experience on how to make veg common in the university. And then they also have a lot of outreach activities in the campus, talks, and they receive, Tsinghua just received Peter Singer last week, and yeah. And then public outreach and food policy. So I have just been to a conference a few weeks ago. It's called the Good Food Conference. And then they look at food not just on plant-based food, but a large proportion of their work is on plant-based. So they actually invite the vice president of hospitality of Yale University to go to China and meet the hospitality management people from the Chinese universities to talk about why it's necessary to do it. I think this is very smart. They find people with the same eye level to talk and to convince them why it's good for the university to have more vegan options. And then here there are two groups. They are based in Shanghai, and they are Viens of Shanghai. Is actually started by an Indian girl who are working in Shanghai, and she's a one-man band, but she's so persistent that she will visit a restaurant maybe a lot of times in a month to just convince them, hey, actually a lot of things on your menu is already vegan, but it's just that you don't market it as vegan. I'm gonna tell you how much market potential you have if you just market it as vegan, and I'm gonna tell you how I'm gonna help you with developing vegan menu. So she actually one person who had a full-time job and help this restaurant to develop a 5-course menu, and just for a very reasonable price. And then shortly after, the restaurant decided to make it a permanent on their menu because she mobilized all the vegans in Shanghai to go and eat at the restaurant to show them it actually works. So it's amazing. And she's collaborating with another NGO who's previously just focusing on, it's called Go Blue, blue sky, blue ocean. So they previously only focused on clean ocean and pollution, less pollution, but now they also realize that it's important to talk about reducing meat consumption if you talk about environmental issues. So they're joining hands to start this vegan challenge, to have restaurants and individuals to try vegan meals. And also they started an amazing platform, it's called iCare. And then on this platform, they bring restaurants and companies on board, and to not convince them, but to help them to provide more more environmental friendly products, environmental packaging or vegan options. And it's a platform for companies, but it's easily usable by people that are conscious and they want to make consumption choices that are friendly to environment and animals. So you have looked at so many like things are being done. So what do we think that we should do more to help reduce the meat consumption? So as you see, like in an individual level, there are already quite a lot of groups that are doing amazing work, and I think we should like continue supporting them. But actually, on this part, it's not being done enough. And then we think if you can target institutions and they can, if you can convince them, they can make like changes faster as well. And so when the individual already changed their mind, they were like, okay, I'm convinced now, I want to eat veg, but where can I eat it? If they can't find a place to eat it, they still wouldn't change, right? So it's very important to convince the institution to change and the companies to change, have more new products and everything. And so it comes to our strategy of ProVeg. So we think we should influence the influencer to make vegan products and options more available for everyone. And then we want to use reasons that matter, because we can't just say, okay, in the West, animal welfare is one of the main motivation for maybe younger people to turn veg. But we can't just move the same mindset and put it in China and say, hey, why don't you go veg because of animals? You have to think about what people really care, and then use these reasons to convince them. So think all reasons matter, but just use appropriate reasoning in different occasions smartly. And we want to use good use of our positive image and track record, because this is a little bit technical, but we are an NGO, and it's not very easy for NGO to work in China. It's because the laws are different than in the Western society. And so we have a positive image of working with government and working with companies, and this way we think we will be like well received in China when we are being looked at by the ministry to see, okay, if this NGO can set foot in China, if they are okay here. And then the final part is that we want to integrate existing expertise and resources and to bring to China and adapt there, because it's very important that we don't just think, okay, this is what we learn in China, this is what we learn in Germany or in Europe, and this will work in China. This is often not the case. So we have to be flexible and adapt our work, programs, and strategy, and really like talk to local groups and see what they think is that should be done more. And yeah. And so what we have done in the past few months, we just started actually like half a year ago to have the China program. So we have done some media outreach. We actually didn't reach out to the media. Media reached out to us because I don't know if you are aware, if you have ever heard about Veg Med. It's a plant-based medical congress in Berlin. And during that time, we invited some Chinese groups to come over to attend one of our summit, and also some of them attend the conference. And the media, if you know the China media, is called CCTV. Is the national television, and the Beijing television also heard about us. So they invited to come to Berlin to actually film how the vegan scene, they visit like vegan or non-vegan restaurants and all the vegan events that's happening. Also, is the Climate Talk is happening, I think, is it the name called Climate Talk? Yeah. So they get to film a lot of different events and like interview individuals and ask them why do you turn veg? And then here they actually show our label, and then they said heaven for like vegan paradise. So they were like, in the program, it's quite funny. They were talking about like meat consumption is an issue now for environment and health for people, blah blah. And so they interview different experts in China to talk about what is your opinion. They all agree, yes, we should eat less meat. And then the next day we're like, let's look at how Berlin does it. So then they switch to Berlin and they show how amazing it is here, because we think this is as our program is based here. So we think this is something that we can do to give them something to look at how a more plant-based society could look like, and that we're building, because it's very important also to have all the groups working in the same field, talking to each other, but not just doing, I mean, of course, it's very important to focus on your own work, but it's necessary to also know what each other is doing, that we can learn from each other, and also not overlap our effort, because China is so big, and no single group can achieve the goal. So we invited some groups over here, over 10 groups from not only China, but also like also from other East Asian countries over and to attend a conference, and they have a night. Each of them present their work. So it's actually, I heard it's actually the first time they have such an occasion to present their work and actually talk about collaborations. And then, yeah. So in the future, we will focus on like corporate engagement. We want to use our advantage of being European and having linkage to European companies to bring them to China. Or actually, there are some, we are approached by some Chinese companies. They said that, hey, we want to have vegan products, but we don't have any idea how to do it. Can you give me some idea? Or like, or I want to learn from like Western companies that are doing really well in this field. So we link them up, and then we hope to organize trips like either bring Western companies to China, or like bringing like Chinese companies to fairs and visit companies here to see how they can exchange on how to run business, on also like food innovation and everything. And then and we will have Veggie World. I don't know if you know about Veggie World. It's a little bit different from the Summer Festival. It's more like expo, but for individual for customers. It's held in different European cities, and then there are a lot of like vegan products, and also not only vegan food products, but also like lifestyle products like cosmetics. And then people can. It's a good chance for consumers to buy, of course, but it's also a good chance for like individual companies, more bigger companies to expose their business. So this is gonna be held outside of Europe the first time. It's gonna be held in Hong Kong and China next year. We're super excited to see how it will turn out. And then we will also try to influence the medical community. So we are hoping to invite people who are working in like public institutions in China to just give them an occasion to, to see how medical experts in the Western society are perceiving plant-based diet. We hope to start the conversation and the dialogue first, and hopefully in the future we also want to have similar congress like the Veg Congress in China. And I think it will be very interesting, because if you know about TCM, TCM, traditional Chinese medicine. Actually, like a lot of traditional Chinese medicine practitioners, they are for plant-based diet. So I'm wondering if a mixture between like Western medicine and like Chinese medicine could be something we can look at together at such a congress. So conclusion. Sorry for keeping you for so long. And I think it's after a positive. And here I just want to show as an end to the Summer Festival. I want to celebrate all the great people's work I have seen, and have like all the great people I've encountered in the past year, because they like told me a lot of things, and I have never expected that people would be so selfless in sharing the information, because there are groups that will talk to me for 3 hours just to teach us how to do certain administrative things. And because they all understand that it's a hard time to do things, but it's necessary, and they will help as much as they can. So these are all the happy faces, and like I have met in the past year. So like yeah, really big thanks to them. And then so I'm very positive that Veg Trend is really a big trend. It's going to be a huge trend in China in the future, because there are like amazing people working here. And yeah, so thank you for bearing with me today. And yeah, thank you.